Please subscribe for more calming historical documentaries and comment below. What time is it and where are you listening from? Before the pyramids cast their long shadows, before the temples echoed with chants to gods now forgotten, before kings wore golden sandals and spoke of eternity, there was food, not food as you imagine it, not the lush abundance carved onto tomb walls or painted on temple ceilings. Those were dreams, painted wishes, offerings to ensure a life better in death than what had been lived in flesh. The reality was different. Let's go there now. You are not a priest, not a noble. You are simply alive, a woman, or a man, or a child, breathing the heat of the Nile, walking barefoot on cracked soil. You wake up in a house made of mud brick, low ceiling, one room, a little smoke. There is dust between your toes before your eyes are fully open. You blink. You are hungry. But hunger in ancient Egypt does not mean what hunger means today. Here, hunger is normal, expected. A companion. Breakfast? If you are lucky, there is old bread. Hard, thick with grit from the grinding stones. Your teeth crunch not just barley but fragments of sandstone. You swallow slowly, carefully. You've lost molars before your time. Everyone has. Even the pharaoh's mummy centuries from now will show ground down enamel and abscesses from the bread you eat now. You chew and you say nothing. There is no jam, no honey, unless your family happens to keep bees, and that is rare. More likely, if there is flavor, it comes from onions or garlic, strong, sharp, tearing through your mouth. Maybe that's good. Maybe it hides the taste of mold. The bread was baked last week or the week before. You sit on the ground. There is no table. There are no chairs. The morning passes. If you are a child, you work in the fields. If you are a woman, you grind more grain. If you are a man, you haul sweat beneath the sun. The gods bless work. The temples say so. But the gods do not share your hunger. You do not stop for lunch. There is no such thing. You eat when the work allows it. If someone is home and the fire is still warm, you might get a small bowl of lentils, cooked with salt if it has been traded for. Otherwise, just water and thyme, boiled until soft, then scooped with more bread, more grit, more broken teeth. You are always careful, always. By midday, the air is thick and swollen. You sweat and there is no towel. You wipe your face on your sleeve. Your hands are stained with earth. Your stomach makes sounds like the river, low, gurgling, constant. You do not complain. To complain is to invite punishment. To speak of need is to admit weakness, and the weak eat last. Later in the day, someone brings a pot from the market. Fish. Not. The fresh kind, not usually. The Nile has given, but it takes two. So the fish is salted, dried and boiled again to soften it. It smells strong. You know the smell before you see the pot. It clings to the walls. It fills your nose. But your mouth still waters. You eat. There are bones. Small, sharp. You learn to push them to the side with your tongue. And then dinner is done. If there is beer, it is thick, murky, more porridge than drink. But it fills your belly, and it dulls the ache in your jaw. And sometimes if you drink enough, it lets you forget the meal you didn't have. You sleep, on a mat, on the floor, with the air buzzing from flies, the corners dark with roaches, and in the dark your belly quiets. But only for now, because morning will come, and the hunger will come again. Let's step back now. You are no longer in the house. You are watching from above. This is not one home. It is thousands. Mud brick squares. Along the Nile's curve. thousands of bellies, thousands of stone-filled breads, thousands of hands grinding, lifting, swallowing salt, swallowing ash. And this is the normal diet. Even in the cities, even under the gods, even beneath the golden tombs that show feasts and banquets and animals lined up for slaughter, those are not true, they are hopes. A wall in a noble's tomb shows geese, ducks, oxen, bowls of figs, loaves stacked like pyramids. The walls tell a lie, carved with care. When I die, feed me what I never had while living. In life, food is survival, not pleasure. Even for the priests, food is ritual. A slab of meat dried in the sun, a jar of honey that only they can taste. And for the pharaoh, he eats better, of course. But not as you imagine. His cooks use sourdough to rise the bread. But still, it is ground on stone. His fish is roasted. But the Nile grows sick with sewage during the floods. His wine is from grapes near Memphis. But most wine spoils in the sun before it arrives. And still his teeth rot. Because food here is not kind. Food is a task, a fight, a system. It is grown with aching backs, carried by broken shoulders, cooked by smoke-choked lungs, and it fills, but it never satisfies. The scribes record numbers, grain, silos, fish caught, jars stored, but they do not write what the food tasted like, because it didn't taste like anything, only like work, and dust, and duty, and now you are back in the house again. You wake, and you are hungry again. And that is where we begin. The hunger is always there, not the kind that screams, not the kind that burns, but the slow kind, the kind that becomes a layer in your bones, in your thinking, the kind you stop naming after a while. It just is. Like the heat, like the flies, like the grinding of stone on stone as another woman begins to make bread again. This is a house not of suffering, but of endurance, and the food, if it can be called that, mirrors everything else about life in ancient Egypt for ordinary people. Let us walk through a full day. Not through a scroll, not through a tomb, but through a kitchen, if it can be called that. The kitchen is not a room. It is a corner, outside if the weather is good. Inside if the wind picks up or the dust storms roll. There is a hearth, a circle of stones, blackened by years of fire. There is an old cracked jar filled with muddy water. And there is a child, maybe 7, squatting to fan the coals. Her eyes are red from smoke. In this house, a woman has begun to grind barley. She sits with her knees tucked, hands forward, shoulders hunched. The grindstone is worn, an oval slab the color of dry blood. The handstone is rounded smooth, stained. From hundreds of thousands of passes, she doesn't speak as she works. The sound of grinding is like a breath. Push, scrape, pull. Push, scrape, pull. The grain shatters into flour, but with it, flecks of stone. Stone that will wear down her. Teeth. Stone that has already done so. She presses her tongue to the roof of her mouth as she works. There's a sore there. She ignores it. The flour is mixed with water. No measuring bowls, no spoons, just a hollowed space in the palm. She pours, stirs with her fingers. The dough is dense, elastic, sticky with the warmth of the air. There is no yeast, but wild yeast lives. On her fingers, in the air, it will rise a little. The bread will be flat, the fire has settled, coals red. She scoops a bit of dough, slaps it onto a blackened stone. It hisses, smokes, crisps. She peels it off. It leaves behind a piece stuck to the rock. She picks it clean with a sliver of pottery, and then she does it again. Each loaf small, each loaf brown, uneven, slightly burnt. Some are set aside, some placed in a cloth sack to trade. 2 are eaten. Bread is not the side of a meal. It is the meal. It is not served on a dish. There are no dishes, just hands. And when the bread cools, it becomes harder than it should be. Not stale, just real. Baked under a sky that does not care. Someone tries to make stew, a small pot, clay, uneven. Inside, onions, crushed garlic, bits of green that grow in the cracks of the courtyard wall. Water, salt, if there's any left. There's no meat, not today, and even if there were, it would not be the kind of meat we imagine. Let us talk about. That meat in ancient Egypt is rare, not because there aren't animals, but because those animals belong to someone. Cows are sacred, oxen plow fields, donkeys carry grain, goats give milk, chickens lay eggs, and sometimes to kill one is a decision. It must be sick, old, useless, and even then every part is used. Meat, when eaten, is usually dried, tough, preserved in salt. It is shredded into stew, hidden under lentils, or roasted over open fire, but only for celebration. You don't eat meat often, and when you do, you chew slowly, not for pleasure, but because it is hard. Some chew until the meat is gone, and keep chewing because it's been so long. But mostly, the meat is a dream, so you eat what is left. Barley, more barley. Some emmer wheat if you're lucky. Emmer is heavy, dense, used for porridge, boiled and reboiled. Thick as clay. Bitter unless mixed with honey. You rarely mix it with honey. Honey is rare, kept by beekeepers near temples, stored in sealed pots, used more for medicine than sweetness, so you chew your porridge and you drink beer. Egyptian beer is not golden. Not crisp, not clean. It is sludge, brewed from barley left to ferment, poured unfiltered, filled with chunks of mash, drunk through reed straws to avoid sediment. It is sour, sometimes sweet, sometimes rotten. You drink it anyway. It dulls your head, fills your belly. You don't question it. Because clean water is for the dead, poured over tombs, used. In rituals, the water you drink comes from the Nile, and the Nile gives life, but it also gives parasites, worms, disease. So you drink beer, even children, even the old. It is safer, barely. And what about fruit? Aha. Yes, the tombs show figs, pomegranates, grapes. But these are for those who write on walls, who trade in silver. UT. May have a fig, once at festival, ripe, sticky, gone in a breath. You may eat dates, dry, dark, shriveled, eaten with a cracked tooth, sucked for sweetness. You may chew a stalk of papyrus just for the texture. But fruit is not your food. It is a memory you borrow. And what of milk? It is not cold. It is not clean. It is taken straight from the goat. Foaming. Sour, thick, sometimes left to ferment, sometimes mixed with barley and boiled. It does not keep. Nothing keeps. There is no ice, no cellar, no preservation. You eat what is ready, or you go hungry. And what of variety? You laugh at the question. There is no variety. There is only what grows, what is left, what does not rot. And so your stomach adjusts to repetition, to blandness, to grit and ash, and your body adjusts to bloating, to worms, to fatigue, and your spirit adjusts to the idea that food is not joy, it is maintenance, it is obligation, and even that you sometimes must do without, because when the flood comes late, when the harvest fails and when the granary closes and there is famine, and then the bread is gone, the beer is dry, and the silence in your belly becomes a scream. But even then you survive, because survival is the one thing you are taught to perfect, not poetry, not beauty, not pleasure, only the quiet strength of continuing. And this is the truth of Food in ancient Egypt. Not the gods, not the carvings, not the feasts drawn in ochre and green, but this moment, you chewing bread that breaks your teeth, sipping beer that burns your throat, and calling it enough, because it has to be. The worst part of food in ancient Egypt isn't the grit. It isn't the cracked molars or the fact that bread cuts deeper than any knife. It's that it is always the same, again and again and again. Not because people lacked imagination, not because they didn't care, but because they didn't have a choice. The Nile dictated everything, and the Nile, for all its blessings, was not generous in flavor. It gave grain, barley, emmer, it gave reeds. It gave mud, it gave fish sometimes, but it did not give spices. It did not give joy. You grow what you can in narrow strips of fertile land. Beyond those strips, sand, endless sand. Beyond sand, nothing. The soil grows tired. The people grow tired. The meals grow tired. It is not that you don't want more, it is that more doesn't exist. Let us visit a village, a real one, not the one carved onto the temple wall, not the one with music and dancers and figs in tall jars, but a row of houses, each the color of the earth, their edges crumbling like stale bread. Men work the fields, women grind and bake, children scatter in the dust. It is nearly midday, a meal is being prepared. That means one thing: more bread. The flour is rougher today, not enough to sieve the stones properly. You notice the sound of teeth grinding even before the food is eaten. It has become a background noise in these homes, people chewing, pausing, swallowing carefully, hoping not to bleed. In a clay pot, a stew boils. It smells unclean, because meat has spoiled. It was caught too late. It was stored too long. But it cannot be wasted, so it is boiled. Boiled with garlic and leek, some strong enough to hide the rot. Boiled until soft. Boiled until it stops smelling like death and starts smelling like food. This is normal. You eat with your hands. There are no knives. Here, no forks, just fingers and whatever cloth is clean enough to wipe them. You chew slowly. You try not to taste. And this is one of the better meals, because it has meat. Down the road, another family eats only boiled lentils and old beer. The lentils are dry, full of grit, and make the children sick, but they're filling, and they keep the body standing. That's enough. In another house, a woman has begun making sour barley porridge. She mixes it with goat's milk, just a few drops. The goat is sickly, thin from the heat, but still breathing. Porridge bubbles. She stirs it with the same reed stalk she uses every day. It has never been cleaned. There is no soap, only water, and the smell of yesterday. When the porridge is ready, she scoops it out with her hands, molds it into small lumps, and passes it to the children. They eat quickly, not because it's delicious, but because they're afraid someone else will take. Yet they chew in silence, and then they sit waiting for it to settle in their stomachs. They do not smile. Food in this world is not about satisfaction. It is about survival. It is about rhythm. It is about control, and it is controlled by scribes, by priests, by granary officials who record how many sacks of grain each man brings, how many jars of oil are pressed, how many fish are caught. The people do not own the land. The people do not store their own harvest. What they grow is taxed. What they keep is measured. What they eat is what remains after all others have taken their share. You harvest in the heat. You deliver the grain to the storehouse. You receive a token, and with that token, you beg for your portion back. Sometimes they give it. Sometimes they don't. If the scribe's records are wrong, your family goes hungry. If the priest decides you are unclean, you do not eat that week. If a neighbor accuses you of theft, your tokens are revoked. You don't argue. There is no appeal. You eat what you are allowed, and when famine comes, you eat less. Famine is not rare. The Nile floods late, or too high, or not at all. The fields dry. The grain wilts. The people walk to the river, kneel and pray, but the river does not hear them. The gods are silent, and the stomach grows louder. During famine, the stew pots dry up. Children cry through the night. Mothers pretend to eat to make the food last. People eat things they should not. Grass, bark. Mud thickened with crushed limestone. Some eat the shells of dead beetles, ground into powder. Some chew leather, old sandals softened in water. And sometimes, when things get too dark, they eat each other. There are scrolls that whisper of this, tales buried in the backs of tombs, never carved onto stone, but remembered. We do not linger on these stories, but they existed, and that is enough. And what of variety? What of pleasure? There are few spices in this world. No pepper, no cinnamon, no cardamom, maybe coriander if a merchant arrives, maybe fenugreek if you live near a temple garden. But most days the only flavor you know is onion, and you eat so many onions your sweat begins to carry their scent. Garlic, too. So much garlic, that your breath is thick and sweet and sharp even while you sleep. Even funerary workers dealing with death daily chew garlic to mask the smell. No sugar, only honey. And even that is rare, and belongs to the gods. If you steal from a temple's bee jars, your hands are cut off. If you steal too many onions from a field, your family is whipped. If you fish without permission, you are beaten. The food is not yours, even when you grow it, even when you cook it. It belongs to others. And the food that the pharaoh eats, the roasted duck, the figs from the delta, the golden beer from temple gardens, you hear of it, but you never taste it. The closest you come is at festival time, when the temples slaughter an ox, when bread is given out, round and soft, marked with herbs. You wait in line for it. Hours. You eat it slowly, carefully, and for a moment, just one moment, you feel what it means to be full, not stuffed, not gluttonous, just but not hungry. And that moment, it carries you for weeks. You remember the texture, the smell, the way it stuck to your fingers, the way the priest smiled as he handed it to you, as if he were feeding the stars. And then the moment ends. You return to your lentils, your grit-filled bread, your thick, warm beer, and you swallow your hunger again. Because in ancient Egypt, food does not sing, it does not dance, it does not comfort, it waits, and so do you. And so the hunger becomes a rhythm, a kind of heartbeat. It is not a crisis anymore, it is a quiet, constant drum, always there, always behind everything. But even worse than the food itself is what it does to your body. Not just the aching teeth, not just the swollen gums, but the sickness. Because in ancient Egypt, food is not clean. The grain is not clean. The water is not clean. The hands that prepare it are not clean. There is no soap, no boiling water to scrub tools, no safe place to store anything. Flies live on everything. They crawl over the bread, then the wounds, then the eyes of children as they sleep. And they return to the bread. You wipe them away, but they return always. Even when you eat alongside them, as though they are another member of the household. Welcome, uninvited, persistent, and with them comes sickness. Let us speak of the most common illness, the belly curse. That's not what the priests call it. They write long names, they invoke gods and demons, but the people know it as a simple fact. Your belly twists, it swells, you sweat, you groan, and then it empties, over and over, until you are a shell, until your strength is gone. It comes from the water. It comes from the stew left too long in the sun. It comes from the bread with a touch of mold, and sometimes it comes from nowhere at all. Children die from it, elders die from it, and in between you simply survive it, and try to forget. And if the belly doesn't kill you, the teeth might, because the bread is not food. It is sand. Literally, ground with stones, the flour always carries bits of grit, and grit is not gentle. Your molars flatten before adulthood. Your gums bleed when you sleep. Your breath smells of rot and copper, and still you eat, you cannot stop. If a tooth goes black, you leave it. If it loosens, you pray it falls clean. But if it obsesses, if the pain shoots up to your eye, you suffer. There is no dentist, only old remedies. Clove is not yet common, charcoal only masks the ache. And so people die from tooth infections. In a world ruled by gods, people die from bread. And still the scribes say the gods are good. Let us speak now of rot, the rot that lives in your home. There is no refrigeration, no ice, no cellars. What spoils? Spoils. And you know it the moment you smell it. You open a jar and recoil. You see the fuzz. You smell the sourness. You eat it anyway because you have to. You hope the stew is strong enough to hide the rot. You hope the garlic will disguise it. You hope the heat will burn away whatever sickness lurks. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. But you do not waste food, because food is not a joy, it is a sacrifice, and still, there are days worse than others. Let us return to the woman we followed before. She wakes early, grinding again. Her daughter stirs beside her, coughing from the smoke. Her husband has not returned. He went to the fish stalls the day before. He was meant to bring back something, but he brought nothing, and she has nothing. The grain is low, the bread is hard. The stew is thinner than it should be, and when she steps outside, she sees the worst sight of all, the grain scribe. He stands with his scroll, his stylus, his smug smile. He is young, clean. His hands are smooth, no stone dust under the nails. He asks her to present her jars. She shows them. 2 are full. 1 half. He frowns. He accuses her of hoarding. She says nothing. He takes the full one. He makes a mark on his scroll. She says nothing. She returns inside, and now she has less than she did before. This is not a mistake. This is the system. Food in ancient Egypt is political. It is control, it is power. The priests eat better because they serve the gods. The scribes eat better because they keep the records. The overseers eat better because they manage the labor. And the people, they eat what's left, and sometimes what's left is nothing. And in those moments the dreams begin. People dream of honey, of roasted goose, of dates so ripe they drip with sugar, of wine pressed from cool grapes, of stews spiced with herbs from the far south. But they wake to porridge, or less than porridge, and they smile anyway because the smile helps the children sleep. Let us speak now of the offerings, the food you leave for the gods, because even if you are starving, the gods must eat. You carry a tray to the shrine, bread, beer, dates. If you have them, you set it down. You pray, you bow. The priest takes the tray when you leave. He eats what was offered. He says the gods are pleased, but the gods never eat. The priest eats, and you eat nothing, and this is called holy. This is called faith. And now let us walk through the markets, not the markets drawn in clean lines where servants carry trays, but the real ones, hot, crowded, buzzing with flies and smells. You see bread sold in stacks, burnt, cracked dry. You see fish laid out in the sun, eyes white, flies thick on their bellies. You see onions piled high, garlic in stringed bundles, beans in open baskets, half crushed under foot traffic. A woman yells about her lentils. A boy cries, because someone stole his dried figs. A man sells goat milk, but it's been watered down. A jar tips, spoils, wasted. No one speaks of it. They just move on, because hunger is not loud here. It is silent. It is polite. It is patient. And it always wins. But there is one meal each year that is different. The Feast of Opet, when Thebes shines. When the statues are carried through the streets. When even the poor are handed bread, soft, fresh, seasoned with herbs. When beer flows from the temple storehouses and roasted fowl is shared among the crowd, children laugh. Music plays, and for one day, just one day, you remember something. That food can be joy. You hold the bread in your hand like treasure. You savor it. You do not share. And later, in the dark, when the feast is over, you cry, not from sadness, but from knowing that tomorrow the hunger returns, the grit returns, the rot returns, and the food will suck again, because you do not live in the paintings, you live in the dust, and the dust does not care if you are hungry, it only waits, and so do you. There is something cruel in how memory works when it comes to food. You don't remember the 1,000 bowls of porridge that tasted like ash and air. You don't remember the 100 times you cracked a tooth on barley bread or drank beer sour enough to sting your throat. What you remember is the one time, years ago, when you ate a fig so ripe that the skin tore before your fingers touched it, and it haunts you. That fig, that sweetness, that softness, your teeth didn't have to fight. It's long gone, but it lingers like a phantom limb of taste. In ancient Egypt, even those who prepare food live in contradiction. Take the bakers, not the ones in temples. Not the bakers who make golden loaves for the priests, shaped like animals or stars, but the street bakers. The ones with the soot-lined hands and burns on their arms. The ones whose ovens are sunken pits behind their homes. Always hot, always dangerous. They wake before the sun. They don't use recipes. They use rhythm. A feel in the hand, a weight in the wrist, a scent in the air. They know the moment the dough is too wet. They know the second the fire is too hot. They work with instincts honed by hunger, not joy. Their bread is dense, rough. Sometimes sweetened with carob if they can find it, but most days it is just dough and ash. They stack it in baskets woven from date palms. They trade it for beans, fish, salt or copper. And they eat the mistakes, the ones too burnt, the ones dropped in the dirt, the ones the rats nibbled first. They eat what no one else will buy, and still they smile, because even bad bread is better than none. Then there are the brewers. Brewing in ancient Egypt is not a craft, it is survival. Beer is not just a drink, it is a meal. A thick, pulpy, fermented slurry made from half-baked barley bread soaked in water and left to bubble in the sun. Sometimes it's filtered through cloth, sometimes it isn't. It ferments fast in the heat. You don't drink it cold. You don't drink it clean. You drink it because it is safer than water, and because it dulls the edge of the day. Even children sip beer, not for joy, but for hydration. And when it's brewed badly, it makes you sick, but you drink it anyway. Because in the world of ancient Egypt, your options are limited to what doesn't kill you immediately. Now let us speak of fish. The Nile gives fish. It is one of the few gifts that seems abundant. But fish is not safe. It carries disease, parasites, and sometimes even rot before it's caught. Still, it is eaten, usually grilled over an open flame, often salted, if salt is available. The rich have fish dried and hung in their storerooms, wrapped in linen and stored in baskets. The poor, they eat what's caught that day. If it isn't spoiled by noon, it's cooked. If it is, it's cooked anyway. You scrape off the slime. You ignore the smell. You chew carefully, pulling bones from your teeth. And you pray the river doesn't punish you. Because for all its beauty, the Nile is not your friend. It floods when it wants, it dries when it wants, it feeds whom it chooses. You are not chosen. You are tolerated. There is also the matter of salt. Salt is a treasure. It preserves. It seasons. But it is not free. Salt comes from far away. It is carried by traders and taxed by officials. The temples have it. The soldiers have it. You use it sparingly. Just a pinch for stew. Maybe a dusting on beans. Most days you cook without it. Your food tastes like nothing. You eat anyway, because the hunger doesn't care about flavor, only fullness. Let's visit a family again. Young mother and her 2 children. The husband is gone, building tombs for someone who will be buried in gold. The woman is making soup, if you can call it that. A pot of boiling water, a few wilted leeks, some dry lentils, and a single bone, from a bird eaten weeks ago. The bone is boiled until it softens, until the last bit of marrow bleeds out. It doesn't taste like meat, but it smells faintly of what once was. She hands her children 2 clay cups of soup. They drink slowly, lips chapped from the sun. And then she scrapes the bottom of the pot. For herself. She drinks in silence. She doesn't remember the last time she ate until she was full. She no longer believes in the concept. And what of those who live near temples? Now we see a different kind of suffering, because near the temples the gods are fed, lavishly. Every day priests carry trays of food, bread, meat, wine, honey, cakes shaped like lotus flowers, but these are not for the people. They are for the gods. Except the gods never eat them, the priests do. They say the gods consume the essence, and the leftovers? They become priestly meals. The common woman walks past the temple gates and smells roast duck. She sees trays of fruit, so fresh the skin still sweats, and she continues walking, because she knows she cannot have them, not even the crumbs. At the center of all this is the calendar. The calendar tells you when to plant, when to harvest, when to fast, when to feast. But it does not ask how hungry you are. It does not care if your child is weak. It only follows the rhythm of the river. 3 seasons. Akhet, Zar, the flooding. Peri, the planting. Shemu, the harvest. And in between you wait, sometimes patiently, sometimes desperately, and sometimes with your hands in the dirt, searching for roots you haven't eaten yet. There are old women in the village who remember. Better times. They speak of years when the floods were perfect, when the barley was tall, when the onions tasted sweet. But those women are few, and their memories grow quiet. And the children? They don't believe in sweetness. They believe in fullness, that is all. And yet, there is something you do not expect in this world. Kindness. Even in hunger, people share. A broken loaf passed from neighbor to neighbor, a cup of beer poured for dull sick elder, a handful of lentils slipped to a hungry child. There is no surplus, but there is mercy, because everyone is waiting for the next hard season and no one wants to face it alone. And in that mercy, there is warmth, not comfort, not ease, but warmth. And maybe in the cold honesty of Egyptian life, that is the one thing better than food. There's a kind of silence that surrounds food in ancient Egypt, not because people do not talk while eating, but because there is nothing to say. What can be said about another bowl of lentils, another strip of dried fish, another lump of barley bread that breaks before it bends? After a while the silence becomes sacred. It becomes custom. Even feasts are quiet affairs for most people. Despite what the murals suggest, drums, dancing, wide trays of goose and grapes, the truth is, most Egyptians will live their whole lives without attending a true feast, because to feast in this land is to belong to the few, and to eat to satisfaction is almost never. Let us walk now through a village at dusk. The fields are emptying. Men carry baskets of straw. Women return with bundles of reeds. Children trail behind. Barefoot, bellies gurgling, smoke curls from small ovens, clay domes pressed against mud walls. You follow the scent. It is not pleasant. It is not meat. It is boiling roots, pulled from the river's edge, a kind of bulrush, not meant to be eaten, boiled for hours to soften. Inside the homes, families gather near flickering oil lamps. They are waiting. The mother tastes the pot, not because she's hungry, but to make sure it hasn't turned sour. She nods. The meal is ready. A few pieces of old bread are dipped. A handful of lentils are spooned out, watered down to stretch for the week. There is no fruit. That was last month. There is no milk. The goat is dry. There is no joy, but there is food. And that must be enough. Let us speak now of class, because in ancient Egypt, your stomach does not just know hunger. It knows where you stand. A worker eats what he earns. A daily allowance of grain, maybe onions, beer thick like porridge. A scribe eats differently. Lighter bread, sometimes chickpeas, preserved dates, occasional wine from Delta vineyards. A priest eats in ceremony, meat from offerings, bread shaped in sacred symbols, honeyed cakes made for gods but passed to men. A noble eats with pride, lamb, fish from the palace pools, figs wrapped in lotus leaves, stews seasoned with imported herbs. And the pharaoh eats like a god, but even his food is bound to the same curse: rot, infection, worms from the river, contamination from flies. No one escapes the flaws of the land, not even those buried in gold. The difference is, when the pharaoh gets sick, a dozen priests pray for him and prepare special foods. When you get sick, you die. Let us return now to the harvest season. The Shemu. It is the time when fields are full, when grain is cut and stacked, when the village smells of dust and chaff. You think this might be the good season, but it isn't, because everything you reap is not yours. A tax collector stands near the granary. He wears linen, crisp and white. He carries a scroll. His guards stand behind him with clubs, not because they expect a fight, but because it reminds you who you are. You carry your sacks forward. You offer your number. You say a prayer that he believes you. He counts fast. He speaks slow. He writes down a number higher than you brought. You argue. He raises a brow, and you step back. You receive less than you gave. That is the law. You walk home empty, and tonight your family eats half portions. But why does no one revolt? Why does no one rise up, demand better? Because you are not hungry alone, and because the gods say this is the way, because even your stories, even your songs, speak of hunger as holy. The god Geb gave you the land, but only through toil. The god Hapi gave you the flood, but only with sacrifice. And the god Osiris, he rules the afterlife not with a full belly but with balance, a heart weighed against a feather, not a feast. To suffer is to be faithful. To eat poorly is to live rightly. To starve is to cleanse the soul. But even these beliefs cannot stop death. Let us follow a funeral now. A child has died, 6 winters old. Too thin, too quiet. He wasted away during the planting season. His body could no longer fight the sickness in the water. The village gathers. The women wail. The men wrap him in linen. The priest lights incense, strong and sweet to hide the scent. A small offering is prepared. Bread, beer, dried onions. They place them in his coffin, not because he will eat them, but because they want to believe he might, because maybe in the afterlife the food won't suck. Maybe he'll bite into bread that doesn't hurt. Maybe he'll drink water that doesn't boil his stomach. Maybe finally he will taste sweetness. It is hope. Nothing more. And yet, despite it all, the people survive. Not because the food is good, but because the people are stronger than the food. They learn how to preserve fish using sun and salt. Even when there's little of either, they learn how to make beer so thick it feels like meat. They learn how to ferment beans, soak grains, soften roots. They learn how to stretch a meal across 3 days with just water and patience. They pass knowledge in whispers. What leaf to chew when your stomach burns? What flour to brew when your child is fevered? There is no cookbook. There is no science, only memory and stubbornness and grief. One day, centuries from now, travelers will find these tombs. They will see carvings of banquets, trays of goose, bowls of honey, piles of figs. They will imagine a paradise. They will write books about a golden age, but they will not taste the grit in the bread. They will not smell the rot in the stew. They will not feel the hollow ache of hunger that never leaves the bones. They will not know, but you know, because you lived it, because you wake each morning and wonder what you'll eat, because your food is not a choice, it is a sentence, and you have no appeal. There's a myth that food is comfort, that after a long day a warm bowl of something hearty and rich will make the pain disappear. But in ancient Egypt, food is not comfort. Food is calculation. Food is politics. Food is control. And more often than not, food is a reminder that you are not in charge of your own life. Let's walk down to the granary. It's surrounded by walls, guarded by men with shaved heads and polished batons. They don't smile. A line snakes around the side. Men, women, old grandmothers holding their tokens. Each one has worked, or someone in their household has, and they've come to collect what they've earned, or at least what's left of it. A clerk stands at the threshold. He doesn't sweat. He doesn't look anyone in the eye. Instead, he unrolls a scroll. He reads names. If your name's there, you step forward. If it isn't, you step aside. Sometimes your name was removed by mistake. Sometimes it was forgotten. Sometimes it was never written at all, and no one tells you why. You beg, you plead, you even offer half of what you're owed. But the clerk simply shrugs. There's nothing for you today. You walk home empty-handed, and your wife begins soaking yesterday's bread in water to make it soft enough for the baby. She scrapes the black from the crust. She mixes in a handful of ground beans. It smells faintly of mildew, but the baby chews it anyway because there's nothing else. In the wealthier districts, the food smells different. You can smell choice in the air. Duck roasted on a spit, glazed with beer and honey. Dates imported from the far south. Goose eggs boiled and peeled. Even the bread is different. Not just round and rough like the poor make, but shaped like animals, gods and flowers. Soft, white, clean, but you will never eat it, because you don't belong there. Even your shadow is unwelcome on those walls. Now let us follow a fisherman. He walks barefoot, his net thrown over his shoulder, a small clay jar of oil bouncing at his waist. He does not fish for himself. He fishes for his overseer. Whatever he catches is counted, weighed, and delivered up the chain. What he's allowed to keep is what no one else wants, the fish with split bellies, the ones that are too small, the ones the sun got to before he did. He brings them home. His wife slathers them in mud and bakes them under coals, a trick she learned from her grandmother. The mud seals in the moisture. When they crack the shell, the fish inside is warm. It smells like river and salt. They eat it in silence. It's a good day. The bad days, though, those are when the river is low. When fish rot on the line before they're even caught, those are the days when you resort to eating pests, not for adventure, not for novelty, just to stay alive. Locusts are caught in sacks and roasted until brittle. They crunch like gravel. Beetles are boiled and mashed into paste. Some add them to barley cakes for extra protein. You don't like the taste, but you like what it does to your muscles. You feel less dizzy when you stand. That's good enough. There are other tricks too. Some families dry papyrus stalks and grind the roots into flour. It's not real flour, not like emmer or barley, but it makes a paste. They shape it into cakes and fry them on hot stones. The result is rubbery, bitter, but filling. You chew each bite 20 times. You learn to ignore the bitterness. You learn to swallow even when it burns. Let's visit a temple kitchen, not because it's holy, but because it's revealing. Here the food is made for the gods, which means, in truth, it's made for the priests. The ovens burn hot. Young boys run in and out, fetching bundles of herbs, crates of figs, sacks of flour stolen from the same granaries that denied your neighbor. A cook stands over a copper pot. He stirs a stew of onions, duck meat, garlic, and wild coriander. He's humming, not because he's happy, but because the hum drowns out the sound of hunger from the outer courtyards. They'll burn the incense. They'll raise the offering. Then they'll eat the gods' food themselves, and you'll go to bed with a piece of flatbread and some leek soup. That's your offering. In the Delta, people eat differently. There's more water, more green. But it's still not easy. Mosquitoes cloud the air. Diseases swim in the water, and they're staple. Snails caught by hand from muddy riverbanks, boiled until soft, picked apart with fingers blackened from work. Children eat them whole, shell and all, when no one's looking. Mothers slap their wrists. You'll choke. But the hunger is stronger than the fear. Occasionally a traveler arrives. He brings something foreign, strange-looking nuts or dried fruits wrapped in silk. The villagers gather around. They ask what it is. He tells them it's from Nubia, or from the mountains, or the sea. They marvel, but they do not taste it, because he's not sharing. It's for the merchant's master, and once he's gone, the children will whisper about it for days, trying to imagine the taste, trying to believe it was real. Let us walk now to a cemetery, not for grief, for evidence, because it's there that the truth of Egyptian food is carved into bone, teeth ground flat, jaws misaligned from years of chewing coarse bread, spines bent by malnutrition, and in the ribs of young children, the telltale thinning of starvation. No written scrolls will mention this, no temple carvings will show it, but the bones remember, and bones don't lie. Now return to the fields. The harvest has begun. You pick barley stalks in the sun, your back bent, your fingers stained with green. You fill your basket. You carry it to the overseer. He nods. You move on. At the end of the day, your reward is handed out. 2 measures of flour, 1 of beans, a half loaf of yesterday's bread. You sit by a tree and eat. You don't talk, you just chew. And in that moment, under the sky, with dust on your skin and grit in your teeth, you feel something close to peace. Because you are eating. Not well, not joyfully, but enough. And in ancient Egypt, enough is a kind of miracle. By now, you know, food is not about hunger alone. In ancient Egypt, food reveals the entire structure of power, faith, suffering, and silence. Let us sit beside a woman, older now, her hair threaded with gray, her spine bent like a branch, too long in the sun. She once had strength, she once had teeth. She once made bread every morning, shaped like tiny suns, her children crowding around her knees. Now her hands tremble when she grinds the grain. The quern stone bites her fingers. The barley flour is coarse, filled with sand again. She breathes. In the dust. It coats her lungs like plaster. She doesn't complain, no one does. Complaining changes nothing. The old woman remembers a time once when there was meat. A neighbor had slaughtered a goat. The animal had broken its leg, couldn't walk, couldn't live. The village shared it. She remembers the smell of the fat sizzling, the way the ribs cracked when pulled apart, the way the marrow melted on her tongue. Her son was 4 then. He smeared grease across his chin, grinning like a prince. That boy is grown now, gone, taken to dig tombs far south of the river. She doesn't know if he eats. She only hopes that somewhere, in that heat, someone gives him bread that doesn't break. His teeth. Let's move from her home to the fields of onions, vast rows of green shoots pushing through black mud. The farmers work from sunrise. They pull, trim, gather, stack. Onions are precious. They are pungent and powerful. Some believe they ward off disease. Some offer them to the gods, but most just try to eat them. A meal of onions and bread is common. It is harsh. It burns the mouth, but it fills the belly. Even in the tombs, onions were placed between bandages. Priests believed they preserved the spirit. You can't afford to die yet, so you eat them raw and wipe the tears from your eyes, pretending it's the onions and nothing else. Across the river, a scribe is eating figs. They are fresh, glistening with dew. He has a bowl beside him with dates soaked in wine. His lips are stained purple. He dips a reed into black ink and writes slowly, "The overseer shall receive 5 measures of bread and 2 of oil. The laborer shall receive 2. He does not wonder what 2 measures of bread looks like. He's never eaten less than 5. He smiles. His stomach is full. He scratches his ear and continues writing. In a different home, a mother stares at her child. The girl is sick. Her lips are dry. Her belly is swollen. She hasn't eaten in 2 days. The mother crushes beans with garlic and stale beer. She feeds it to her daughter, 1 finger at a time. The girl gags, but she swallows. It's not nutrition, it's ritual. The mother sings softly, an old river song, learned from her grandmother. It doesn't change the taste, it doesn't cure the illness, but it gives the child something to cling to, even if it's only sound, even if it's only memory. Let's walk now through the storerooms of the palace, grain stacked in baskets so high it touches the beams. Jars of honey sealed with wax, meats preserved in salt, garlic braided into thick ropes. No rat dares to enter. The walls are watched. The guards are loyal. None of this food will rot. None will be wasted. Some of it will never be touched. It will be buried with the dead alongside gold and incense to feed the spirit in eternity. Meanwhile, the living outside scrape mold from crusts and chew on bones that have already been boiled twice. There is no sugar in ancient Egypt. The sweetness of life is limited to fruit, rare, seasonal, and usually saved for the rich. Most people do not know sweetness. When a child tastes honey, for the first time they weep, not from the joy of it, from the shock because their tongues have only known ash and brine, bitterness and salt. You learn not to expect pleasure in food. You learn to eat for fuel, not for joy. Let's speak now of bread again, because bread is everything. It is the center of life, and yet it is also the center of suffering. Bread made from emmer wheat or barley is heavy, dark, coarse. To grind the grain, you kneel beside a quernstone for hours. The flour you make is mixed with water, perhaps a pinch of salt if you have any. Then, left to rise in the sun, covered with cloth to keep the flies off, you bake it in a clay oven fed with dry reeds and dung. The heat is uneven, some loaves burn, some remain uncooked in the middle. It doesn't matter. You eat them anyway. There, all you have, your teeth wear down, your stomach churns. But the bread keeps you alive barely. In temples, bread is shaped like lotus petals. Stuffed with dried fruit or soaked in palm wine, it's offered to statues. And when the offering ends, the priests collect it. They say it has been blessed. They say it carries divine taste. And when they eat, they chew slowly. Not out of reverence, but indulgence. They don't know what it means to chew in fear, to chew in shame, to chew in silence. You do sometimes. A festival is declared. The pharaoh wants to please the gods, wants to impress the people. The temples overflow, bread is handed out, beer is poured, meat is roasted, real meat, not salted fish or dried entrails. You eat more in one day than you've eaten all month. You laugh, you dance, you forget. But that night in your home, as your children fall asleep full for the first time in weeks, you sit in the corner, you weep quietly, because you know this will not last, and hunger is returning. It always does. It always has. The Nile was supposed to be a blessing. Its waters fed the soil, its floods gave life, its fish filled the nets. But the Nile giveth, and the Nile taketh, and when it takes, it does so with silence. No warning, no fury, no storm. Just the slow retreat of water, or the rage of too much. And with it, the food vanishes, grain spoils, fruit trees rot, fish die and float to the surface like ghosts of promise. You watch the river. You always watch the river, because in Egypt, your plate is tied to the current, your hunger to the horizon, and the Nile. She has never been faithful. Let us now follow a young man. He works in the marshes, cutting reeds for fuel. He's 17, strong-backed, hungry always. He wakes early, eats nothing. There is no time, no food to spare. By midday his muscles ache. He finds a patch of wild purslane growing near the water's edge, a sour, weedy green. He chews it raw. It is bitter, almost metallic, but it quiets the growl in his gut. He works on. Later that night he returns to a single bowl of bean stew, thinned with water and thickened with sand from the bottom of the pot. He does not complain. He doesn't know a world where eating is supposed to be enjoyable. Meanwhile in the city, a perfumer's wife eats lotus seeds dipped in honey. She drinks goat milk cooled in jars half buried in wet sand. She sighs. This milk is too warm, and throws it out. Not because it is bad, but because she can. Her servant watches, eyes blank, mouth dry. She hasn't tasted milk in years, and she never will. Let us now go deeper into the village granary. A child is being taught to count, not by fingers, not with beads, but with rations. His father shows him 3 loaves of bread. This is 1 day's worth. Then 2 onions. This is for the week. Then a small jar of beer. This is shared. The boy nods. He doesn't ask for more. He doesn't dream of more because he knows better. He knows what happens when the jar is empty, when the loaves run out, when the onions sprout green from the sides. He knows that food is not a promise. It is a privilege one easily lost, and when it is lost, you turn to desperation. Some go to the temples. They offer prayers, a bundle of reeds, a handful of old grain. Please, they whisper, feed my family. The priest takes the offering, writes something on a scrap of papyrus. We will pray for you. He will not feed you. That is not his job. Others turn to the market. There the smells overwhelm. Pungent fish, burnt bread, ripe dates sweating under the sun. You walk past, you don't buy, you can't. A single copper coin might buy you a sliver of dried fig, a full day's wage. Might earn a palm-sized cake filled with beans. Meat? Unthinkable, unless you steal it, unless you risk the cane, unless you're caught. And if you are, you'll wish hunger had killed you first. Let us visit a widow now. She once had plenty. A husband who worked near the palace brought home bread with wheat in it, not barley. He died last year. Now she survives on scraps. She barters old linen for flour. She mixes it with ash. To stretch it, she roasts it on the hearth. It cracks like stone. Her son refuses to eat it. I'd rather starve. She says nothing. Because she understands. She bites into the ash cake herself. Her gums bleed, but she swallows. Because she has no pride left, only duty. There are rumors, always, of better food far south. Of farms near the first cataract where figs grow fat and juicy. Of priests who share meat if you pray long enough. Of gods who reward fasting with golden meals in dreams. But those are lies, stories for the desperate. The truth is simpler. Food is survival, barley and sweetness. Sweetness is for the gods, not for you. A new pharaoh rises, he declares a feast. Grain is distributed, bread is thrown to the crowds. You catch a loaf, you bite it eagerly, until your teeth crunch on something inside. Rock? None but a shard of quernstone, a common hazard from rushed grinding. Your molar cracks, you spit blood, you chew anyway, because that bread, even bloodied. Here's the best you'll get this month. The festival ends, the priests retreat. The drums fall silent. You return to your daily stew. Today it's thinner than usual. The baby coughs after sipping it. You lie and say, tomorrow will be better. But you don't. Believe that. Because food in ancient Egypt is not about better. It's about just enough to walk, just enough to work, just enough to keep dying slowly, instead of all at once. And still, you survive, because you must, because hunger is not death. It is a rehearsal, and you have learned every line. You hear the grinding before you see it, stone on stone, a rhythmic scrape, slow and steady. It comes from the back of a courtyard where a woman sits bent over her quern, pushing grain back and forth with her palms. Her wrists are wrapped in cloth, not for ornament but to keep the skin from peeling. Her knees ache, her spine burns, her fingertips are raw. She doesn't look up as you pass. This is the sound of survival. This is the kitchen. Not pots of stew bubbling cheerfully, not laughter around a table, just stone, dust, silence. You step into her home. There's a fire pit sunk into the floor, its edge blackened with soot. An old copper pot leans against the wall. The air smells like chaff and mold. A child sleeps in the corner, his ribs visible even in the dim light. A goat bleats softly in the other corner. The woman doesn't smile, but she gestures for you to sit. She tears a piece from a flat loaf and hands it to you. It's dry, gritty, and slightly sour. You chew slowly. You do not thank her, because thanks would be cruel. You both know what it cost. Outside, in the wide streets near the temples, food tells a different story. There are vendors shouting, baskets full of herbs, baskets full of dates, stalls with dried fish curling in the sun. Spices burn. Your nose. Cumin, coriander, garlic. Boiled beer sizzles in clay jugs. But this market is not for everyone, it is for those with coin. It is for scribes, priests, artisans of rank. It is for women with perfume and bracelets. You walk through like a ghost. No one stops you. No one calls out. They know you can't buy, and you pretend you're just walking, just passing by, even though your stomach knots at the scent of melon or the glimpse of soft cheese on a reed plate, even though your mouth waters at the roasted meat spinning above coals. You keep walking, and you swallow nothing. Let us pause now. In a village square, a man is being punished. He is tied to a post. His hands are bruised. His face is swollen. They say he stole food, a few onions, a jar of lentils, half a cake meant for the priest. You watch the overseer step forward. He says nothing, just lifts the stick and brings it down. Again, again, the man screams. No one moves. You look away because you understand. You've thought of stealing too, and you're not sure what stops you anymore. Now let's move to a river barge loaded with grain, sacks piled to the edge. Two men row slowly, their backs shining with sweat. A scribe lounges beneath a canopy, writing numbers on a papyrus roll. This grain is not for the village. It is not for the temples. It is tribute, bound for the palace, a gift from the harvest, paid in pain. The barge drifts past reeds, past birds, past children swimming with hollow eyes. No one waves because they know that food is not coming back. Back in the village, a woman boils water. Not for cooking, there is nothing to cook, but hot water fills the belly. It tricks the mind. She pours it into tiny clay cups, one for each child. They sit quietly. They drink. It doesn't taste like anything, but they pretend. Tonight, they will sleep early. Tomorrow, maybe someone will bring a melon or catch a fish. Hope in Egypt is always tied to someone else's hand. Let us follow a funeral now. An old man, thin, bitter. He hadn't eaten well in years. His sons carry his body wrapped in woven linen. They place his offerings beside him. A small loaf, a clay jar of beer, and a dried fig. The priest chants, the incense smokes, and still the widow weeps. Not just for the man, but because that loaf could have fed the baby for 2 days. But now it will rot beside a corpse, because the gods must eat too. Now we walk to the edge of the desert. There's a village here built for workers. Men who carve tombs, who lift stones, who die forgotten. Their rations are precise. Bread, beer, dried onions. Once a week, salted fish if the Nile's kind. They rise before dawn. Their breakfast is beer and bread, thick, sour, filling. It tastes the same every day. But there's no time for complaints. They chew as they walk. They bleed before midday. They return with sand in their lungs, and at night they do it again. The foreman eats better. His bread is softer. His beer is clear, but not by much. Even power doesn't buy luxury here, just slightly less misery. Let us listen now to the songs sung at harvest. They are not joyful. They are rhythmic, meant to match the swing of the sickle, meant to keep the mind away from the heat and the thirst. One verse goes, "O barley, do not hide. Come to my hands. The overseer watches. My belly cries." They laugh as they sing it. Not because it's funny, but because the alternative is crying. There are days when the flood doesn't come, or comes too high. The fields drown. The granaries dry up. The temples panic. You're told to pray harder, to sacrifice more, so you do. You burn herbs, you chant, you give your last bread to the shrine. And when that doesn't work, you blame your neighbor. You say they angered the gods, you spit in their doorway. It doesn't bring back the food, but it makes the hunger easier to carry. Let's finish this part beside a man chewing on sugarcane. He's rich. He owns cattle. He owns men. He owns you, in a way. The cane snaps between his teeth. He offers you a piece, smiling. Try it. You hesitate, he insists. You bite, it's sweet, too sweet. Your mouth aches with it, he laughs. Careful, he says, you'll never go back. And he's right, because you won't taste sweetness again for a year, maybe longer. You chew it, slowly, savoring every drop, and when it's gone, you swallow the stalk, because even the fibrous waste feels like a gift. Morning again. But in ancient Egypt, morning does not begin with breakfast, not for most. The baker's kiln is already hot. The smell of burning chaff lingers in the air. He is not baking for himself. He bakes for those with standing, for the priests, for the estate managers, for the temples that ration his ingredients. He is allowed to keep the broken loaves, the ones that burn or fall apart, the ones no one else wants. That is his payment. And he chews them gratefully, mouth filled with sand, crumbs stuck in his beard, stomach turning, but fed. Let's follow the baker's daughter. She does not eat bread today. There isn't enough. Instead, she picks wild greens near the riverbank. Watercress, thistle shoots, a few reeds. She chews them raw. Bitter, but better than nothing. She tells her younger brother they're king's leaves. Pretends they're what the palace eats. He laughs. He doesn't know better. But she does. She saw the palace trays once. Bowls of quail eggs, steamed goose, honeyed cakes shaped like stars. The memory tastes worse than the weeds. Elsewhere, an old priest breaks his fast with goat cheese and dates. He eats slowly. He does not worry about the next meal. His bowls are always full. He says a prayer for the dead before eating. Then he drinks barley beer, thick and warm, seasoned with sweet herbs. He calls it a blessing. It is, but not from the gods. From the system that feeds him for chanting, that rewards prayer and punishes labor, that says the stomach of a priest is more sacred than the stomach of a farmer. We now visit the cattle yard. A young herdsman is hauling dung. He's barefoot. His legs are crusted with filth. He hasn't eaten since the day before. He's not allowed to touch the milk until the master's share is sent. If the cow dies, he gets nothing. If it lives, he gets a ladle. Today, the cow lives. He drinks from a bowl carved from clay, milk still warm, thick with clots. He doesn't flinch. It fills him, more than bread, more than hope, because it's protein. And protein is rare. A mother prepares a stew of lentils, no meat, no onions, just water, herbs, and yesterday's scraps. She adds a pinch of natron to soften the flavor. Her son watches. He doesn't speak, he just waits. She ladles it into cracked bowls. They eat, quietly. This is the third time this week they've eaten the same stew. But it is warm, and warm food in a cold home feels almost like love. The markets are closing. Fish that weren't bought rot on straw mats. The seller tosses them into the canal. A beggar wades in. He picks them out, one by one. They stink. The eyes are milky. He will roast them anyway. He says the smell doesn't bother him anymore. Only the silence does. Only the feeling that he's forgotten. Like these fish. In a brickmaker's hut, dinner is half a cake of barley bread and a smear of bean paste. The men are exhausted. They chew without speaking. One of them removes a stone from his mouth, spits blood. They all nod. It happens. They keep eating. They must. Their shift begins before dawn, and food doesn't wait for the rested. Let us go now to the temple kitchen. Tonight, a feast is being prepared. There is lotus root, grilled fish, and even imported nuts. The priests will eat. The gods will accept. The cooks have been working all day. They are not allowed to taste. But they smell everything. One of them, a girl of 14, swipes a fig from a basket. She hides it in her sleeve. She will eat it later, under the stars, alone. And for a moment it will taste like heaven, even if she's beaten when they find out, even if the fig is overripe, even if the sugar makes her sick. A young boy is chewing on crushed reeds. He was told it helps with hunger. He isn't sure. It makes his mouth bleed. But he keeps chewing, because pain is better than emptiness, because chewing means hope. Another man is dying. His ribs stick out. He coughs dryly. The healer gives him a poultice made of garlic, onion, and beer foam. It doesn't work, but it's all they have. His wife lays cool cloths on his forehead. She places barley water at his lips. He cannot drink. The smell of the grain reminds her of when they had more, when he came home with fish, when they made flatbread with dates. She cries quietly, because she knows this is the last hunger he will feel. And he won't survive it. A merchant returns from Nubia. He brings ivory, incense, and dried fruit. He gifts the fruit to a scribe, dried apricot. The scribe eats it slowly, savoring every bite. A servant watches. He's never tasted apricot. He never will. He only sees the juice at the corners of the scribe's lips, and he licks his own lips, imagining. In the workers' barracks, beer is the only joy. Thick, strong, coarse with bits of grain. It is food, drink, and sedation. It dulls pain. Quiets thought. 1 cup and you feel warm. 2 and you sleep without dreams. 3 and you forget that the stew is gone, that your child hasn't smiled today, that your wife cried in the morning and said nothing. Beer is the balm, and when it's gone, the ache returns, hunger and truth, hand in hand. Let us end this part with a woman kneeling at the edge of her home. She is planting leeks. It is dry season, but she believes the Nile will rise again. She places each bulb into the ground carefully, covers it, whispers a blessing. Her children are asleep. They didn't eat tonight, she did not either, but the soil is warm and her hands, though cracked, are steady. She sings softly, "Grow, little root, bring salt, not sorrow. Let my children chew." In the darkness, the leeks do not answer, but they will. And when they do, the stew will return, and the hunger will fade, not forever, never forever, but for a moment. And in ancient Egypt, a moment is enough. There is a sound you begin to recognize after years of eating badly. It is the sound of someone choking softly on dry bread. Not the loud gasp of something stuck. No, that's too dramatic. This is gentler, more defeated. The bread is too dry, too rough. There is no oil to moisten it, no milk, no beer left. The man takes a sip of warm water, swishes it around and tries again. He does not complain. He only mutters something under his breath that sounds like a prayer. But it's not. Addressed to a god, it's just habit. We sit next to him now. He is a papyrus cutter. He walks through marshes each day, slicing long stalks with a bent knife. He binds them, dries them, stacks them for the scribes. He is missing 3 teeth. He blames the bread. His wife tells him it's aging. But he knows the truth. Stone in the flour, dust in every bite. Years of chewing as if you're gnawing on the banks of the Nile itself. His gums bleed sometimes. Still he eats, because hunger does not care how much pain food causes. It only cares that food arrives. A girl nearby is eating a pomegranate. She found it beneath a vendor's cart. Bruised and split, the ants already inside. She brushes them off, one by one, and licks the seeds. She does not bite. She does not chew. She only sucks the juice gently, as if tasting something holy. Because, in a world of salt and ash and mouldy barley, sweetness is a visitation. You walk now into a home carved into stone. The walls are cool. There's a niche for idols and a jar of stale incense. The man inside is boiling bones. They are old bones from a bird that died too long ago. He boils them to pull out what little marrow is left. The soup smells like smoke and regret. He dips stale bread into it. His daughter watches. He doesn't speak to her. She doesn't ask for a share. They both know it's not a meal. It's a memory pretending to be one. Outside, a caravan has arrived. Traders from the Red Sea coast. They bring dried fish, sea salt raisins, hard cheeses packed in beeswax. The crowd gathers, but only a few buy. A priest selects the best. A noble servant points at what his master demands. The rest only look, stomachs tightening, mouths drying, hands twitching with the need to touch something they cannot own. One boy steals a date. He is caught, dragged away. The trader says nothing. He's seen it before. He will see it again. He only mutters, "Don't come if you can't buy." As if survival were a transaction. The brickmakers are eating again, same meal, same posture, same silence. One of them tries to joke, says maybe the Pharaoh will send them goose next week. They laugh, but not with hope. It's the kind of laugh that means, we know, but we have nothing else. Someone mentions a story about a village, upriver where the floods didn't come, where mothers fed their children sand to quiet the crying. The laughter stops, because even lies carry weight. Let us visit the granaries. Now they are full beyond reason, sealed and guarded. This is government grains, tithed, taxed, and locked away. It will not be touched until famine strikes, and when it does, it will be distributed with ceremony, but not with kindness. You will. Kneel, you will wait. You will say your name, you will be given a bag. You will walk away and only then open it, and only then find it short. But you will not turn back, because short grain is better than none. And in Egypt, enough is a fantasy. In the desert, the tomb builders chew dried lentil cakes for energy. Their teeth are cracked from it. Their breath smells of fermentation. They joke that it keeps the scorpions away. One of them coughs blood. They give him beer. It does nothing, but it tastes like forgetting, and that is all anyone wants. Back in the town, a young woman makes date paste. She mashes it with her fingers, mixes it with millet, rolls it into little balls. She will sell them near the temple gate. They are soft, almost sweet. Children who pass by stare. Some beg, some run when she looks at them. One boy dares to ask. She hands him half a ball. He grins, thanks her, runs away. She smiles, then wipes her hands and doesn't eat today. A thief is caught stealing honey. He is dragged into the square, beaten, stripped, marked. The honey was for the priests. The man had 4 children. None of them speak. They watch, eyes open but distant. Later they will chew on reeds soaked in water and pretend it is honey, and they will not speak of him again. You walk through the poor quarter. Now, the air smells of boiled cabbage, of urine, of damp earth. A woman is making stew, something green and sour. There is a dead rat near the corner. She does not move it. She does not see it. Her eyes are on the bubbling pot, because food is boiling, and that is all that matters. Let us pause now at the Nile. It is high today. The water sings. Fish jump. A boy has caught a small one. He holds it high. His father slaps him. Put it back. It is too small. The boy obeys, tears in his eyes. He will eat nothing tonight, but the fish will grow, and maybe next week, maybe they will both live long enough to catch it again. A woman carries her last measure of grain to the temple, not for worship, for trade. She wants medicine for her daughter. The priest takes the grain, hands her a mixture of herbs and oil. She does not ask what's in it. She walks home, gives it to the child, watches her sleep, and wonders if she made the right choice, because tomorrow there will be no bread, but maybe there will still be breath. The child stares at the grain. It sits in a cracked bowl, uncooked, unwashed, unboiled. Her mother says, "Wait for the fire." But the fire is not ready, because the kindling is damp, and the pot is cracked, and the wind blows in through the holes in the mud brick wall. So the child just stares. She is 5 years old, and already she understands the rituals of hunger. There are steps, there are delays, there is patience, not the virtuous kind, but the forced kind. The kind that turns the stomach inside out and teaches the body to pretend. She rubs her fingers over the dry grains. They are sharp, hard. Each one feels like a stone. She counts them. 37. She will remember that number until she dies. Elsewhere, in the house of a scribe, the meal has begun. He is not rich but not poor. His table is clean. His food is present. There is bread made of wheat, not barley. There is stew with chickpeas. There is beer, well fermented, poured carefully. He eats slowly, with pride. His children smile. But beneath that smile is a truth. He cannot read a single scroll without seeing hunger on its edge. He has written letters for farmers asking for food. He has recorded rations shorted from the king's storage. He has signed receipts for meals never delivered. And so every bite, even now, feels stolen. Not from someone specific, but from the order of things. He chews and says nothing. Because he knows better than most. Food like ink can run out. Far to the south, a group of women gather. They are grinding grain in a communal space. Querns are lined like tombstones, hands moving in slow unison. One sings, a soft, repetitive chant. Stone and grain, sand and pain, feed my mouth, not the rain. It is not joyful. It is not bitter. It simply is. Grinding is not just labor. It is memory. It is inheritance. It is punishment. These women have fingers shaped by stone, calluses where rings would be. Their backs curve forward like bows, drawn tight with every season. They do not look at each other. They do not speak. Because food, when it comes this hard, does not allow conversation. A man dies in the field. He was threshing. He stumbled. The cart crushed his chest. They cover his body. Say a quick prayer. And then they gather the grain he spilled, because it cannot go to waste. And even in death, a man is judged not by how he lived, but how much food he left behind. At the river's edge, a woman teaches her daughter to fish. It is quiet. The line is nothing, more than a reed. The bait is a piece of beetle. They catch nothing for hours, but the girl does not complain. She knows this is not leisure, this is dinner. At last, they catch something small, barely the size of a hand. They will boil it whole. There will be bones. There will be more broth than meat, but they will call it a feast, because on days like this, names matter more than portions. Let us now walk through a home of an embalmer. The smell is thick, resins, oils, salt. He has just finished preparing a body. His hands are clean now. His stomach growls. He opens a small package, bread stuffed with ground beans and leek. It smells of vinegar. It is cold, but it is filling. He eats quickly. because even death cannot stop hunger, and because he knows that the gods may preserve the flesh, but they do not feed the living. A young boy tries to sell lotus roots in the market. No one buys. Not today. There was a procession this morning, a noble's burial. Most have spent what they had on offerings and wreaths. Now they tighten their purses. Now they walk past. He yells louder. Fresh root, for stew, for healing. Still no one buys. Eat. The end of the day he eats one himself. It is fibrous. It tastes like the riverbed. He gnaws on it anyway because shame cannot fill a stomach, but root can barely. In a noble's home a feast is held. There is meat, roasted duck, steamed carp, spiced lamb. There are sweet cakes, jugs of date wine, fruits. From distant oases, slaves serve in silence, musicians play. Laughter fills the air, and outside, in the alley just beyond the high walls, 2 children press their ears to the stone, listening, imagining. The sounds of chewing are like a lullaby. They fall asleep in the dust, dreaming of spices they will never taste. A famine year. The granaries are locked tighter. The priests tell the people that the gods are angry. Sacrifices increase, but food decreases. People grind acacia seeds. They boil bark. They dig for roots not meant for human mouths. Some die. Some do worse. It is said that in one village a woman sold her own child's bones for soup. No one asks if it's true, because in famine all stories are true. A healer tries to grow herbs. The soil is tired. He waters it with beer. The plants grow. Slow. His wife begs him to use that beer for food. He refuses. These roots will cure, he says. She doesn't argue. But she cries later, because her son is coughing blood, and roots take too long. A scribe writes this line into a scroll. Let the people be satisfied, for the land gives its bounty. Then he pauses, looks out the window, sees a child eating mud, dips. He's read again, and keeps writing. Because truth does not pay as well as flattery, let us end this part with a woman on her rooftop. She holds a pot. Inside is porridge. Thin, watery. She stirs it with care. The sun sets. She calls her family. They climb, barefoot and tired. They eat together. No one smiles, but no one is alone. And sometimes in ancient Egypt, that was enough. Not satisfaction, not pleasure, not fullness, just not being alone, just being fed together under the same failing sky. The morning light is soft, but the truth it reveals is not. The Nile is low. Its banks are cracked. The fields lie thirsty, their once rich mud now dust. And yet, inside a storehouse, grain sits sealed in thick pottery jars. The guards don't blink. Their spears lean beside them. Their sandals are clean, their bellies full. You ask one of them, will there be rations this week? He doesn't answer. He only looks at you the way a cliff looks at a beggar, unmoved, unshaped by need. You already know the answer anyway. At the village edge, an old man sits beneath a tamarisk tree. He peels garlic slowly with fingers knotted by time. He places the cloves in a bowl, pours oil over them, and stares at the mixture as if trying to summon something divine. This will be his only meal today. Garlic in oil. There is no bread left. No fish. No son to hunt. No daughter to buy grain. But still he eats like a prince, slowly, methodically. Each clove a ceremony. Each swallow a stubborn rebellion against vanishing. He whispers to the tree, as long as I eat, I remember. The tree does not answer, but it shades him anyway. Elsewhere, a cook in the service of a minor noble prepares lunch. She slices lotus roots and stirs them into barley stew, adds onions, lentils, dried parsley, tastes once, adjusts the salt. The noble will eat from imported bowls, his fingers cleaned by a servant between bites. The cook will eat from the pot, not because she is starving, not today, but because this is the rule. The tongue that seasons must not go hungry, but neither must it be seen feasting. She licks the spoon, and for a second she is queen of her own mouth. The potter's boy has eaten nothing all day. He sits near the kiln, fanning flames, sweat pouring. Down his face his father tells him not to stop. There is a loaf waiting if we finish by nightfall. He imagines it, imagines the crust, the sound it makes when torn. He fans faster. Later, when the pot is done and the sky is dim, he receives the loaf. It is smaller than he thought. It is drier. But it is real. He bites, and it scrapes his throat. He cries anyway, not from pain but from relief, a marriage celebration. There is singing, clapping, perfumed oil poured onto guests' heads. The couple is dressed in linen. The bride glows. And the food? Oh, the food. Flatbread with honey, figs stuffed with sesame, roast duck, dates on skewers, milk cakes dusted in cinnamon. Servants carry trays. Children sneak second portions. Drunken uncles tell stories with mouths. Full of meat. It is rare. It is sacred, but only for this one day. Tomorrow the guests return to their grindstones, to their fields, to the bite of raw leeks and boiled grain, and they will say to each other, "Remember that meal," and they will smile, because memory too is a form of nourishment. Inside the priest's chamber a ritual begins. He places bread on an altar, a bowl of pomegranate wine, fish from the sacred pond. He chants, offers it to the gods. Then the temple keepers collect it. They say it has been consumed spiritually, but physically it will be eaten by the temple staff, by scribes and stewards, by accountants and guards, not by the poor. Never by the poor. Divine leftovers never trickle downward. They stay within the walls that echo with prayers for rain, while those outside pray for crumbs. In the schoolhouse, a young boy writes on a potsherd the sentence, "May the Pharaoh grant abundance to the land." He copies it 20 times. Each time, his writing grows neater. Each time his stomach growls louder. At lunch he unwraps his packet, a single piece of onion bread wrapped in palm fiber. It smells of sweat, of soil, of love. His mother packed it that morning before walking to grindstone duty. He eats every bite, and when the other students laugh at the smell, he says nothing, because that bread is not shame, it is sacrifice, folded and baked. Let's visit the water fetcher. She walks 4 times daily between well and home. Each jug is heavier than the last, each return trip longer under the sun. At night her reward is soup. Leek soup, boiled down to green mush, no meat, no bread, no seasoning. She drinks it slowly. Each sip is thin, almost nothing. But it is hot, and when the body has worked all day, heat is a kind of kindness. She closes her eyes and for one moment imagines the taste of lamb, then swallows and walks again. Near the palace gates, a girl sells ground flour cakes. She mixes them with water and presses them into small patties, sells them for half a measure of salt or a string of dried garlic. She doesn't eat her own cakes. They are not for her. They are survival, packaged in, hand-formed discs. If one remains at night, maybe she'll eat, but not before. Because hunger, when owned, can be sold, But hunger fed too early is simply waste. A fisherman returns home empty-handed, his nets tore. The reeds tangled. He sits in his hut and pulls at the holes with quiet fingers. His wife watches. She hands him boiled chickpeas and a crushed date. He nods but does not thank her. Thanks are for guests. He is her husband. And in ancient Egypt, the act of feeding is not praise, it is duty, like weaving, like dyeing. Now let's sit inside the home of a healer. She grinds carob with mortar and pestle, adds it to boiled water, stirs in barley. She feeds it to a sick child. The child vomits. She tries again. This time, the child drinks, sleeps. She does not eat tonight. Her body does not demand it, because when someone else is ill, your own hunger steps aside. Temporarily, but only temporarily. Her cart breaks an axle near the edge of the reed fields. It was carrying beer, clay jars wrapped in wet cloth meant to stay cool in the heat. But now one has cracked open. The amber liquid leaks into the dust. The driver curses. The apprentice tries to scoop some with a cup. A guard walks by and kicks him. "Let it go," he says. They do. Because beer, even in its loss, is still not yours. And in Egypt, food that touches the ground may as well belong to the gods, or to no one. The cart is dragged away, axle scraping. The dust drinks what the people cannot. Inside a weaver's hut, a girl unrolls a threadbare cloth. Inside it, her family's lunch. 3 dried onions, a finger-length loaf, 1 boiled egg, halved and salted. Her mother says, "Take only a bite. Leave the rest." But the girl's fingers hesitate. The egg is warm, soft, fragrant. She wants to eat the whole half. Instead, she nibbles the edge, then wraps it back up. She knows this is how love works here, not in abundance, but in the art of leaving enough for others. The world does not offer second portions, so you must create them by biting less. The market is louder today. A man from the oasis is selling honey, not the thin, wild stuff, real honey, thick as syrup, sealed in palm rind pots. People gather, not to buy, but to look, to inhale. The vendor opens a jar and dips in a stick, slowly, ritual-like. He lets the sunlight catch the golden sheen. He says nothing, no haggling, no offering. Just that smell in the air, a perfume of sweetness, of what life could be. A small boy licks his lips. He knows the taste only in dreams. The jar is resealed, loaded back on the cart, rolled away. No one follows, no one dares, because in Egypt, beauty that close only hurts more. Let us walk now to a temple courtyard. It is midday. The sun crushes the walls like stone. But there's a line forming. People are quiet. A high priest has declared alms in the name of the gods. Bread will be given, 1 loaf per head. You wait. Your fingers are dry. Your tongue tastes like copper. Ahead of you, a child begins to cry. His mother presses her hand over his mouth. "Don't waste your breath," she whispers. The priest arrives. Servants behind him. They carry baskets. Inside, dense, round loaves, marked with a press of the god's eye. One by one they hand them out. No words. When your turn comes, you bow. You receive the bread. It is still warm. For 1 heartbeat, you feel something like reverence. Then it's gone. You do not eat immediately. You hide it. Break off a piece. Save the rest. Because the gods might be generous today, but tomorrow they'll forget your name. A baker's apprentice sneezes over a batch of dough. His master slaps him. "Fool, you waste what others would bleed for." The dough is scraped off the board, given to the pigs. The apprentice watches. wonders what it would taste like, half-baked and sour. But he dares not ask. He returns to kneading. His fingers ache. His belly hollows. The bread rises. The bread bakes. But never for him. In the palace, a banquet begins. A foreign envoy has arrived. Gold gifts were exchanged. Peace spoken in careful tones, now comes the eating. Geese stuffed with herbs, whole fish baked in clay, almond cakes, baskets of fresh grapes and plums and figs, their skins dewed with oil. Slaves carry platters. The nobles toast. Someone spills wine and laughs. Outside, behind the curtain, the scent wafts into the corridor. A boy, one of the torchbearers, closes his eyes and breathes in deep. He will remember this scent for years, even when he is old and blind and broken, because when taste is forbidden, scent becomes everything. A soldier returns from patrol. He removes his sandals. Dust clings to the edges of his feet. His wife serves him a meal, 2 turnips, a bowl of barley gruel, and a flatbread that cracked in the fire. He eats it silently. No complaints. He has chewed worse. He has starved through campaigns. But his daughter looks at him strangely. She says, "Is this all we have?" He nods. She says, "Then it's a feast." And they eat together, with nothing between them but silence and the crunch of bread. In a quiet courtyard, an old woman feeds birds, crushed grain, stale crumbs. They flock. She watches them with tired eyes. Once she had 5 children. 4 are dead. 1 left for Nubia. Now she lives in a hut the size of a closet, sleeps on a mat. Her food comes from temple offerings, what's left behind after the priests take their share. She eats with her fingers. She doesn't chew much anymore. Her gums are weak. But she feeds the birds every day, because some things should eat without guilt, even if she never did. On the bank of the Nile, an old fisherman casts his net, not for fish, but for memory. He remembers when the waters were fatter, when the river pulsed like a vein through the kingdom. Now he catches bones, rotten twigs, bits of pottery. Still he casts again, because the act is the meal now, the motion, the waiting, the sound of water on the rocks. He eats only once today, roasted beans, blackened, burnt. He dips them in brine, and drinks beer that tastes of metal, but the sky is pink and the wind is kind. So he forgives the food. Let us end with a child. She sits alone. Her parents are away. The fire is out. She has a bowl of porridge. It's cold now, thick. She stirs it with her finger. Tastes and smiles, not because it's good, but because it's hers. Because in a world where food is always taken, always measured, always handed down like judgment, this bowl is a gift, not from a god, not from a king, just from today. Today fed her. And in ancient Egypt, that is a miracle. Good night.